Harlem simmered in the late summer heat, the kind that didn't just cling to your skin, it pressed down like a verdict. The air shimmered above the asphalt, thick with exhaust frying oil and the must of old red brick. On 125th Street, the afternoon buzzed with motion, but within it walked a man untouched by the humidity. Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson. He cut through the haze in a charcoal gray suit tailored so sharply it looked carved from stone. His brow was dry, his stride unhurried. When you rule Harlem, even the weather respects your presence. At his side was Mai, the soul behind the iron hand. She softened every edge without losing strength, dressed in a pale blue gown that made sunlight do her bidding. Her hair was penned with care, each strand deliberate. Together, they weren't simply a couple, they were Harlem's foundation. As they moved past the Apollo, people paused. Men tipped their hats, women nodded with reverence. There was an unwritten law embedded in the sidewalk. You didn't step to Bumpy Johnson, and Lord help you if you disrespected his wife. Not everyone understood the cost of breaking rules. Just a few blocks down, a sleek, cherry-red convertible screeched to a halt like it didn't belong, because it didn't. 4 young men spilled out, all swagger and privilege wrapped in inherited confidence, outsiders from the Upper East Side. Their haircuts were Ivy League perfect, their pockets swollen with allowance. They shouted over music none of them actually heard, fueled by cocktails and the delusion that money makes you invincible. At the center was Julian, 20, cocky and red-faced with bourbon burn. His Yale jacket clung to him like armor against a world he didn't understand. To Julian, Harlem wasn't a neighborhood, it was a zoo, and today he'd decided to go on safari. "I'm telling you," he yelled, throwing an arm around his friend Trip. "This place is a joke. Everyone acts like it's dangerous. It's just fruit stands and church ladies." Trip, sharper than the rest, kept glancing around like he could smell a storm coming. His uncle was a cop, knew the names whispered with caution. "Lower your voice," he muttered. "This isn't prep school. There are people here you don't mess with." Julian scoffed, his laugh slicing through the city's rhythm. "Mess with? You mean the staff? Please, my family practically owns this city. Everyone here works for us, whether they know it or not." That's when he saw them. Bumpy and Mai were crossing the avenue, moving with grace and weight, like royalty refusing exile. The crowd adjusted instinctively to give them space, as if gravity itself bent in their direction. "Who's that?" Julian asked, pointing with a boozy tremor. "Look how he struts like he owns the place." Trip's face drained of color. "Oh God, come on, let's go. Now." "Why?" Julian grinned. "Who is he? Some wannabe mayor?" Trip's voice dropped. "That's Bumpy Johnson," he whispered, like the air itself was listening. "My uncle says he's the real power. Numbers, heroin, protection, he's dangerous. They say he slit a man's throat over eggs." Julian squinted at Bumpy, seeing only an older black man in a perfect suit walking with a woman too elegant for this side of town. His brain twisted it all into resentment. A card-carrying member of privilege, Julian saw Bumpy's calm as a challenge to his own importance. How could someone from these streets command this kind of respect when Julian couldn't even get service without a tip? Bile and ego swirled inside him, birthing something vile. He wanted to unmake it, ruin the mirror held up to his inferiority. Around him, his friends were quiet, but Julian's false courage surged. "He's nothing," he declared, stepping away from the safety of the car. "A myth. Let's see what happens when you pop it." Trip lunged forward, grabbing his sleeve. "Julian, don't. Please, that's Bumpy." Julian ripped free. "Watch me," he sneered. "Let's remind him how the world works." His voice was loud enough to echo. His friends didn't follow. No chants, no cheers, just fear. They piled back into the convertible without speaking. Trip turned the key and peeled off, tires screeching. They knew, whatever was about to happen, it wouldn't be a show, it would be a reckoning. Bumpy felt the shift like a ripple in still water. The usual flow of the street paused. Even the music from the record store softened, as if unsure whether it was still allowed to play. His hand closed slightly around Mai's arm. "Ellsworth?" she asked, reading the tension in his jaw. "Keep walking," he murmured, voice low and steady. "Just a fly buzzing, but every pest is loud at first." Julian staggered into their path, blocking the sidewalk with a drunken smirk plastered across his face. He towered over Bumpy, young and broad, but his presence felt flimsy like a house of cards opposite a fortress. Bumpy stopped. His eyes took Julian in, overpriced shoes, scuffed already. Hermes belt, the dull, empty glint of eyes burned by bourbon. "Excuse us, son," Bumpy said with graceful dismissal, "the kind you'd offer a server mistaking your order." Julian didn't move. He chuckled, giving Bumpy a messy once-over before shifting his eyes to Mai. The leer on his face sliced across dignity like broken glass. "That's a sharp suit, boy," Julian slurred, latching on to the word like a weapon. "My dad's butler wears one just like it." Stillness drowned the street. Not absence of sound, but the kind of pause before an explosion. The kids selling snow cones froze mid-scoop. The checker players didn't finish their turns. Time went thick. Bumpy didn't blink. Beside him, Mai barely breathed. He smiled tightly. "Is that so? Well, your father has good taste. Now kindly move." He angled her around. But Julian stepped in again, legs firm with fake courage. Inside him, alcohol and adrenaline sparked like dry fuel. "Not so fast," Julian sang, voice higher now. "I'm not talking to you anymore." Then he looked at Mai, like she was property under evaluation. "And you, walking around like some kind of princess seriously? Who do you think you're fooling?" Mai's eyes met his, fire and pity colliding. "Go home," she said softly. "You're drunk." Julian raised his arms like a showman. "Drunk? Maybe, but at least I'm not." He paused, grinning like his punchline was clever. Then he dropped it. "A streetwalker dressed in Sunday clothes. How much he paying you, sweetheart?" The word lingered, venom coiled in it, meant to strip everything from her. Mai gasped, hand to mouth, but not from fear. From pain, from attempted humiliation. It was a blade, an erasure. Bumpy let go of her arm. There was no shouting, no gun drawn, not even a scowl. His posture settled like a lion who has stopped pacing. A stillness more dangerous than movement stole over him. The charming mask slid off quietly, revealing what kept Harlem in check. His gaze hollowed out, the light vanishing from them. They no longer saw a businessman, they saw the man who came back from Alcatraz, a master of silence and survival. Julian was still grinning, drunk on his performance, eager for a reaction he could play against. Yelling, curses, a shove. He didn't expect silence. He didn't expect the street around him to drop in temperature like a cold front sweeping through skin. When he finally looked around, his audience wasn't cheering. His own friends had vanished with the convertible. A wide ring of people formed around them, not to witness a scene, but to create space. The kind of space predators need. Suddenly, Julian realized he was completely alone. Bumpy took a single step forward, not fast, just deliberate enough to puncture Julian's bravado. They were nearly chest to chest now, close enough for Julian to feel the chill leaking from Bumpy's skin like frost. "What did you call my wife?" Bumpy asked, in a voice so quiet it made the hairs on your neck stiffen. Julian swallowed hard. His hands fidgeted at his sides. I just said," he stammered. "You called her a streetwalker." Bumpy didn't ask. He confirmed. "In my neighborhood, in front of my people." To her face. Julian tried a bluff, planting his feet. "It's a free country," he said with an unsteady laugh. "My name's Julian Vanderhoven. My father," Bumpy's hand shot out. No wind-up, no flourish. Just a sudden, iron grip landing square on Julian's shoulder. His fingers found the nerve between the boy's neck and collarbone and pressed. Julian's knees buckled instantly. He gasped through clamped lips. "I don't care who your father is," Bumpy whispered, leaning close enough for Julian to feel his breath. "He ain't here. God ain't here. It's just you and me." Bumpy stared at the boy, long enough to trace every line of his face. He calculated it. Discipline over impulse. He could end him here, easily. But this wasn't the moment. Any violence on 125th in broad daylight would bring sirens, headlines, and white outrage. A rich boy bleeding here would send the entire system swarming Harlem like angry bees. No, this required precision. Bumpy was a chess player, not a street brawler. He let go. Julian stumbled backward in inadequate relief, clutching his arm, face twisted in panic. He blinked. He was still standing, still intact. And like many fools, he misread mercy. "Yeah, that's what I thought." Julian laughed, finding his voice again as reflexive cover. "You know what's good for you." He straightened his jacket, talking loud for whoever hadn't already left. "Just a myth, that's all." He turned to walk away, unmarked. Or so he thought. He didn't see Bumpy glance toward the quiet figure by the newsstand Zip. No words were exchanged, just a nod. Zip nodded back and vanished into the alley, like smoke curling out of sight. Bumpy turned to his wife. The ice melted instantly. His hand rose with infinite care to wipe the tear trailing down her cheek. "I'm sorry you had to hear that, baby," he said gently. Mai shook her head, barely holding her composure. "He's just a stupid, drunk child, Ellsworth. Let it go. That's why Bumpy loved her, but he couldn't always give her what she asked. There were things you had to pay for, not with fists, not with bullets, but something deeper." He resumed walking, escorting her through Harlem like royalty, unfazed by the common. "Ice cream," he promised. "Let's get you some ice cream. Weather's too damn hot for this mess." But everyone on that block knew what had just happened. They saw it in his tightened jaw, the flicker of time checks behind his eyes. They knew. Julian had become something terrible, a man already dead who just didn't know it yet. That night, long after the sun gave way to stifling humidity, Julian found comfort under neon lights. He was in a jazz club on 142nd Street, surrounded by strangers and ego. With a new crowd, new drinks, and a fresh scotch in hand, the legend he told grew with each retelling. "I looked him dead in the eye," Julian boomed, feet propped arrogantly on the table's rim. "Called out his tart right there in the street. The guy just stood there, didn't touch me. Folded like everybody does when money talks. A dancer sitting next to him mid-break looked at him like he'd spoken Latin. 'You said that to Bumpy Johnson?' She said his name like a prayer." Julian laughed. "You people are so dramatic. He's a ghost story for old folks." He stumbled into the night around 2 a.m., looking for a taxi through the sticky velvet of Harlem darkness. The street was too quiet, the kind of quiet that murmured warnings in your chest. A black sedan appeared, gliding toward him like a sentinel. No headlights, just intention. Julian waved. "Taxi! Hey!" The door opened. "Finally," he muttered, climbing in. "Take me to the Plaza Hotel, and make it snappy." He never finished the sentence. Two sets of hands burst from the shadows, grabbing his collar, slamming a soaked rag over his face. The scent filled his nostrils, chemicals, tobacco, decay, chloroform. Julian thrashed, but his protests were muffled in darkness. Dragged inside like a sack of meat, the door slammed shut. Locks clicked. Inside the car, all light was swallowed. Heavy boot pressed down on the side of his neck as he squirmed. "Please," he wheezed. "My dad, he'll pay you. Name your price." A deadpan voice above him answered. "You money's no good here, kid." The car eased forward, smooth, silent, dealing out fate like playing cards. Down by the river, where the warehouses stood like ghosts of the industrial past, the sedan finally stopped. Rats, the size of cats, stared from the shadows unbothered. Fog rolled in like theater curtains. They dragged Julian from the car. His head pounded. He coughed bile and bourbon onto wet concrete. His tailored blazer now hung like a burden. He was hauled upright, escorted to two rusted metal doors by Zip, in a mountain called Pettigrew. The doors creaked open. Inside was cavernous, forgotten by time. Steel beams rose into shadows. One swaying bulb lit the space sparely. A chair waited. "Center stage." "Sit," Pettigrew growled, tossing Julian into the seat. He fought to stay upright, eyes bouncing from corner to corner. "What is this? What are you going to kill me?" Quiet, Zip said simply. His tone made silence feel preferable to breath. Duct tape rasped off its roll. Julian's hands were bound to the arms of the chair. Cold sweat poured down his back. "No, please. Please, I'm sorry," he babbled. "I was drunk. I thought it was funny. I didn't mean it." Tape sealed his fate. His transition from boy to cautionary tale had begun. For a long time, nothing. Just his gasps and a lonely dripping pipe. Then footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Inevitable. Bumpy emerged from the darkness, no longer in his day suit. A fresh white shirt now, sleeves rolled to thick forearms, black suspenders, hands calm, purposeful. In his right hand dragged a baseball bat, wood rasping over stone like a warning song. Julian forgot how to breathe. The bat scraped along the ground as Bumpy walked past Julian like he wasn't even there, like he was debris on a street meant to be swept away. He moved to a metal table in the corner, picked up a small towel, and carefully cleaned his hands. He worked patiently, like a man preparing to eat dinner, not deliver nightmares. When he finally turned, the light caught the grain of the bat. Ashwood, Louisville slugger. Clean, uncracked, and unforgiving. "Julian Vanderhoven," Bumpy said, letting the name roll slow off his tongue, like he was tasting it for the first time. "Junior, born 1943, Yale, class of 65, captain of the debate team. Daddy owns Vanderhoven Steel." Julian's entire body rattled the chair. "How do you know that?" he stammered, eyes wide, voice hoarse. "I know everything that happens in my city," Bumpy replied coolly. He began circling the chair. "When a sparrow falls in Harlem, I hear it hit the sidewalk. And you," he leaned in, eyes narrowing, "you came strutting onto my street, insulted my wife, and thought that was just going to slide." He moved so close Julian could count the pores on his face. "I messed up. I know, Mr. Johnson. I was drunk," Julian whimpered. "I didn't mean it. It was a mistake, okay? She's beautiful. She's a queen." "A queen," Bumpy echoed. "Yes. Yes, she is." The words sliced through Julian's panic. "But that's not what came out of your mouth, is it?" Bumpy's tone dropped, voice level turning jagged. "You didn't call her a queen. You dressed her in filth in front of a crowd." Bumpy raised the bat. No swing, just holding it, vertical, steady, gleaming oak in a pool of light. "You even know what a streetwalker is?" he asked softly. "She's a woman with no options. A survivor. The world takes, so she sells what's left. That's a tragedy." His voice hardened again. "But that's not my wife. My wife stood by me through prison. Alcatraz. You know what that means?" He tightened his grip on the bat. "She held my head when I was bleeding, hung onto my soul when even I wanted to let it go. She's the only clean thing I ever had." Julian sobbed, choking on fear. "Please, don't kill me. Your father," Bumpy said, turning away briefly and swinging the bat loosely in one hand. "You keep talking about him like he's God." "Think he'll fix this?" he chuckled, stepping closer again. "You think money fixes everything? A broken window, a parking ticket? Yeah, but you know what money can't fix?" He stopped right in front of Julian. Disrespect. Just then, the iron door of the warehouse groaned open. Julian jerked toward it, hope lighting in his chest for a fleeting moment. Salvation? Police? Miracle? What's miracle? But it wasn't a cop. It was Mai. She stepped into the warehouse like she didn't belong but owned it anyway. Still in that blue dress, still impossibly refined amid the violence brimming just inches from the surface. Her heels echoed like dripping water in a cave. Julian looked at her and knew. Her presence meant judgment, not rescue. Mai's eyes touched on Zip, on Pettigrew, then stopped on her husband. "Ellsworth," she said. Her voice reached across miles. "Go wait in the car," he said without turning. "This isn't for you." She took another step forward, as calm as ever. "That's a boy tied to a chair. Look at him. He's terrified. He's not a threat, Bumpy. Not anymore." Bumpy's jaw twitched. "He's a man," he corrected, turning his head just enough for the light to find the steel in his eyes. "He's 20. Old enough to hold a rifle. Old enough to spit on a woman in public. Old enough to bleed for it. I didn't mean it, Julian begged Ma, his voice cracked and trembling. I swear, Mom, please tell him I'm sorry. So sorry. She paused in front of the chair and looked down at him like one might look at a shattered heirloom. Sad. Heartbreaking. Do you have a mother? She asked gently. Julian nodded fast, desperate. Yes, ma'am, I do. Would you ever call her what you called me? His head shook violently. No, never. Then why did you think it was okay here? Ma asked. Her voice was low, but it echoed louder than a scream. Silence. Julian couldn't answer. He just sobbed. Because race, because neighborhood, because ignorance. None of it could crawl out of his mouth fast enough. I turned to Bumpy, hands soft and pleading. Don't do this, please. He's already broken. You kill him. You're proving him right. You becoming the animal he pretends we are. Bumpy's eyes stared at her. A long, unblinking silence stretched. The rage was alive in him, a separate entity, pacing behind his ribs. He crossed the line, he murmured. There has to be a price. And there is, she said, voice firmer now. He'll live scared. He'll carry the shame every day. Let that be the penalty. Don't add his blood to my soul, Ellsworth. He's not worth damnation. For a second, Bumpy's shoulders softened. He was on the edge of dropping the bat. Air seemed to rush into the room. Then, something else lit behind his eyes. Not rage, clarity, purpose. He gently removed her hand from his arm. You're right, he said. I'm not going to kill him. Julian exhaled so deeply it sounded like his soul had escaped. Oh, thank God. Thank you, he said between sobs. But Bumpy wasn't done. But he still needs to understand, Bumpy continued. He thinks the worst thing that can happen is dying. That's not fear. That's a shortcut. He's gonna learn the hard way. He turned toward Zip. Lock the door. The iron bolt slammed down with a booming finality. I stepped back, her breath catching. She knew what came next. Maybe not pain, but something worse. You think this ends with an apology? Bumpy asked, turning back to Julian. You think I'm going to beat forgiveness into you? He walked to a crate near the wall and pulled something out, a heavy object that clunked to the floor before Julian. A rotary phone. The wire snipped. Do you know who I called before Zip picked you up? Bumpy asked without waiting. I called your father. Julian's face twisted. You what? He whispered. Didn't tell him I had you. Didn't threaten. I asked him a question. If he had to choose between his business empire and his son's reputation, which would he save? Bumpy leaned in until Julian could see every line in his forehead. You want to know what he said? Julian shook his head like the answer would kill him faster than any bat ever could. He asked how much it would cost to make the problem go away, Bumpy whispered. Didn't ask if you were okay. Just wanted the bill. He stood tall again, lifted the bat, brought it down with full force onto the floor next to Julian's foot. The explosion of wood and concrete made Julian scream with the abandon of a dying man. His body convulsed in the chair. That's the first inning, Bumpy said coldly. We're going to play all 9. The bulb overhead swayed. Julian's whimpers bounced off steel walls. Bumpy didn't swing at him, not once. Instead, he kept swinging at the stone beside him. Closer, louder. Methodical madness. Each crack a reminder that physical pain wasn't the target Julian's soul was. Mai turned her back and clasped her hands. She couldn't watch the dissection. She'd saved his life. But the lesson? That wasn't hers to spare. The bat kept falling, and with every slam against the floor, a boy rich in dollars and blind in heart was being reshaped into someone who would never again wear arrogance as armor. The sound of ash wood striking concrete didn't simply echo through the warehouse. It sank into the walls, shivered through the pipes, crept into the marrow of the building itself. For Julian, each strike was a countdown, and when none of them landed on his body, the waiting became its own form of torture. He gasped in quick, panic breaths. Every joint walked tight in fear. He kept waiting for the pain, praying for it even because pain would end the suspense. But it never came. "Open your eyes," Bumpy said. The calm in his tone was worse than anger. It wasn't a monster's growl. It was instruction, like he was correcting a student who'd misunderstood the assignment. Julian peeled his eyes open. Harsh light swung from the bulb above, casting long, slow-moving shadows across everything. Bumpy stood 5 feet away, resting on the bat like he was leaning on a cane at a garden party. No shouting, no fury, just gravity. Disappointment hung on him like cologne, heavy, suffocating. "You're flinching," Bumpy observed, lighting a cigarette with a flick of brass. Smoke curled toward the ceiling. "You think you know how this ends. You've seen the movies. You think I'm going to start breaking fingers to get the combination to a vault I don't care about." He stared at Julian like a mirror. "That's what your kind never learns. Violence isn't the worst thing that can happen. Pain fades." He took a step closer. "Bones heal, but I'm not here to break things that bounce back." Julian tried to respond, but all he could manage was a wheeze, his throat stuck between nausea and terror. "Zip," Bumpy said quietly. From the calm edges of the room, Zip emerged again like bad news in human form. He carried a dented metal bucket. It clanked as he placed it in front of Julian's chair. The water sloshed inside, gray with grime. Bleach and something sour tinted the air. Floating in it was a single rag, sodden, stained, and unwelcoming. "What is?" Julian rasped, not understanding. "What is that?" "A choice," Bumpy said, "or maybe a sentence." He turned his eyes toward the entrance without raising his voice. Come here, baby." My return to the center of the warehouse, still regal beneath the overhead light. The shadows pulled away from her like they knew better than to touch her. She stopped, 3 feet from Julian. Helpless in the chair, he looked up at her like she was a painting that had come down off the wall to pass judgment. "You called my wife a streetwalker," Bumpy said, glaring at the boy who had shrunk by half. "Implied she was dirty, that she was for sale." He walked around the chair, dragging the bat in lazy arcs beside him. "We're going to test that. If she's what you said, then maybe there's no harm. But if she's a queen, like you said out loud a minute ago." He leaned down to Julian's ear. "Then you just walked into holy ground with filthy feet." His hand moved to Julian's head. He didn't yank, just guided, forcing Julian's face toward the water below. "You're going to wash her feet," Bumpy said. The silence that followed wasn't empty, wasn't absence. It was pressure. Even the leaking pipe in the distance seemed to pause. Julian blinked. "What?" he whispered. "You heard me," Bumpy repeated. "You're going to use that rag. You're going to get down. You're going to clean the dust from her shoes so I can see your shame reflected in the leather." Still calm, Bumpy pulled a switchblade from his pocket. No flourish, no drama, just a soft snick as the blade caught the light. He leaned down again, slicing through the thick duct tape holding Julian's wrists. Blood rushed back into Julian's limbs in pins and needles bursts. He was free, and for one wild second, he thought really free. He looked at the door, calculated the distance. He was fast, fit. Bumpy was older. Surely he could make it. Run now. Just run. Bumpy saw the flicker in his eyes. Smiled. That same knowing smirk that doesn't need effort because it already owns the board. He lifted the knife slightly and gestured toward the shadows. "You could run," he said, "but Zip hasn't had exercise all week. He loves chasing rabbits." Julian turned his head. Zip stood at the door, still, arms folded, eyes wide and dead. All thought of escape wilted like a paper flame. Julian lowered himself slowly, legs shaking, pride leaking out of his spine. He sank to the floor on hands and knees, not escaped, but transformed. He crawled, actually crawled, knees scraping against the dirt-dusted floor, toward the bucket of tainted water. Each movement deeper than humiliation, it was erasure. He, Julian Vanderhoven IV, was supposed to be a future senator, a man who'd inherit boardrooms and lineages. Now he was a mess of shaking limbs, crawling like livestock in a Harlem basement. He reached the bucket. The smell made him gag. He dipped the rag in with shaking fingers. It soaked up gray water like it had done the job 100 times already. He choked. I looked down at him. There was no triumph in her gaze, no revenge, only something quieter, sadder. Pity, not for his pain, but for what he had done to himself. "Go on, child," she said softly. Julian reached for the heel of her shoe. Clean leather, expensive, graceful. He wiped gently like it might vanish under too much pressure. "Slower," came Bumpy's voice. With respect. Julian scrubbed. He tried not to cry, but each scrub took something else from him, something he thought would always be his: dignity, superiority, immunity. They vanished into that rag along with the street's dust. Bumpy circled slowly. "You missed a spot," he said. "Inside the arch." Julian whispered, "Yes, sir." He started wiping faster, fervently now. He wasn't polishing shoes. He was begging for a reset in the universe. "Now tell her what she is," Bumpy said. Julian froze. His hand trembled mid-swipe. Tears rolled into the bucket. She's a lady. Not good enough." The scrape of the bat returned. Closer. "She's a queen," Julian cried. "You're a queen. I'm sorry. I swear to God, I'm sorry." "And what are you?" Bumpy asked, crouching now, face to face. His voice wasn't cruel, just undeniably true. "If she's a queen and I'm the king, what does that make you?" Julian couldn't look up. He stared into the grimy water. His reflection stared back, smeared, melted, broken. I'm dirt," he whispered. "I can't hear you." "I'm dirt," he screamed. "I'm dirt," he screamed. "I'm nothing. I'm nothing. I'm garbage. I'm sordid." Bumpy stood up again. "Good. Now we're working in reality." He looked over at Mai. "Is that clean enough for you, baby?" She stared down at her shoe. It glistened like it had never touched the ground. Then she looked at Julian, hunched and broken. Her expression didn't change. There was no celebration in this, just a necessary sadness. "It's enough," Mai said quietly. "Let him go. He's broken." But Bumpy wasn't ready. "Broken?" he said, more to himself than her. "Not yet. He thinks this is over," Bumpy added, eyes still locked on Julian. "He thinks he can walk out of here, rinse off in a marble shower, slip back into his suit and pretend this didn't happen. He thinks this is a nightmare he can wake up from." Mai remained silent. She knew that tone, knew that once Bumpy passed a certain point, mercy became memory, not possibility. He turned to the darkness again. "Zip, bring the phone." From behind the shadows, Zip moved, rolling out a small wooden table. On top sat a black rotary phone, old and ominous, connected to a long trailing cord that disappeared into the gloom. Julian raised his head slowly, confusion flickering behind his swollen eyes. "A phone?" he croaked. I can call someone." Hope flared, foolish and fragile. "Your dad said he'd save you, right?" Bumpy said without a smile. "Said he'd pay anything. Said you were the most important thing in his world." He gestured to the phone. "Prove it." Julian clawed his way onto his knees, barely balanced, barely balinge. His hands gripped the receiver like it might pull him from drowning. "Thank you, oh God, thank you," he exhaled. "He'll pay. He'll give you whatever you want." Bumpy stood over him, unmoving. "Dial." Julian turned the dial with a trembling finger. Click, whir, click, whir. He knew the number by muscle. Memory the private line to his father's study in Connecticut estate. It was 3:15 in the morning. His father would be asleep, but this line never went unanswered. It wasn't built for convenience, it was for legacy. Power didn't sleep. The phone rang. Once, twice, a third time. Julian begged silently, forehead damp. "Please, Dad, pick up." Click. A voice answered on the other end, sleepy and annoyed. "Hello? Dad?" Julian choked out. It's me, Julian." The voice stiffened, tone sharpening. "Julian, do you have any idea what time it is?" You're supposed to be at the plaza. Are you drunk again? If you're in custody somewhere, no! Listen, Julian interrupted. I'm in Harlem. I said some things to someone important. I messed up. I messed up bad. They have me. I'm in a warehouse. I don't know where exactly. They dragged me into a car. There was a pause, a silence heavy enough to split steel. Who has you? The voice asked, suddenly too calm. Bumpy stepped forward. He didn't rip the phone away, just pressed gently, taking control with one touch. He lifted the receiver. Mr. Vanderhoven, Bumpy said, switching effortlessly into a voice as smooth as marble. This is Ellsworth Johnson. Your son is sitting here in front of me. Silence, then again recognition. The voice on the other end turned sharp, no longer dismissive. I know who you are, Julian's father said. Don't touch him. If you so much as lay a finger or bruise, and I will bury you. I'll have the city under martial law before sunrise. I'm sure you'd try, Bumpy said, not rising to the bait. But I play chess with the police commissioner on Tuesdays. He still cheats. That's not what we're here to talk about. He looked down at Julian, who was staring at the floor now, unable to lift his eyes. Your son came into my neighborhood, and he called my wife a streetwalker. In public. In front of my people. Bumpy paused. Mr. Vanderhoven, you know what that means. What do you want? Julian's father said quickly. How much? The words came fast, like a reflex. Just give me a number and I'll get a courier there within the hour. No, Bumpy said. I've got enough money. See, what I want is clarity. Your boy seems to believe that your name protects him, that his bloodline is a shield. What I want to know is he right? He's my son, Vanderhoven replied. Of course I protect him. Bumpy's tone cooled by a few more degrees. Funny, because last year when he wrapped that Porsche around a storefront and put that girl in the hospital, you told your lawyer something real interesting. Julian looked up fast. He didn't know. Bumpy knew about that. You said, Bumpy continued, and I quote, if that boy embarrasses me one more time, if he jeopardizes the merger, I'll disinherit him. He'll be dead to me. Then Bumpy held the phone away from his mouth just slightly. Say it again, he told the father. Say it so your son can hear you. The silence that followed was surgical. Julian held his breath. His lip trembled. He waited for his father's fury, the defense, anything, even a lie. But the voice that finally came through was cold, corporate, and final. We are 2 days from the IPO, Vanderhoven said. If a scandal hits the press, the board will drop me. I can't afford public embarrassment right now. Silence. Then, whatever happens, keep my name out of it. Do what you have to do. Just don't involve me. Click. The line went dead. The dial tone hummed through the space. Julian stared at the phone. His lips parted, but no air came in. His chest caved in silence. His father had left him. Not metaphorically, not abstractly, literally. Bumpy slowly replaced the phone on the cradle. He didn't look at Julian, just exhaled, like something sad had been confirmed. You see? His voice fell to almost gentle. You're poor, Julian. Poorer than any man on the street. He crouched down and looked Julian in the eye. Because when my people are in trouble, we bleed for each other. We carry each other. We may not have stocks or yachts, but we'll fight and die for the ones we love. He stood to full height again. And you? You're a liability. A number on a ledger with a parent who just opted out of the contract. From his pocket, Bumpy pulled the cash from Julian's wallet. He held it not like wealth, but trash, rolled it into a bundle and tossed it carelessly into the air. Bills scattered like dying leaves, landing across Julian's lap, in his hair, around his knees. Take your money, Bumpy said like it was something ugly. It's all you've got left. Julian didn't move. Not a twitch. What was paper to a man who just watched his legacy burn down by phone? Get him out of here, Bumpy said to Zip. Jump him at 96th. Let him walk home. Zip grabbed Julian under the arms, hauled him upright. His feet dragged pitifully. At the door, Julian twisted, Gripping the steel frame with the last flicker of resistance, he turned toward Bumpy, eyes swollen and bloodshot. "Why?" he croaked. "Why didn't you just finish it?" The question landed soft, but heavy. Bumpy lit another cigarette, let the silence build tension. Then, in the glow of the match, he said plainly, "Because dead men don't suffer." He walked to Mai and took her hand. Behind him, Julian stood frozen as those final words slithered around him like a chain. Bumpy didn't turn. "Every time you put on a suit," he said over his shoulder, "every time you smile or walk into a boardroom or pull open your wallet, you're going to remember this night. Remember what you paid. Remember who sold you out." Bumpy smiled faintly, barely visible in the dark. "That's your prison," he said, "and there's no parole." Julian hit the pavement outside like discarded luggage, limp and stunned. The sedan pulled away without a sound, leaving only the echo of tires rolling over cracked concrete. He sat there on the curb, dazed, soaked in sweat and grime, his fine clothes clinging to him like regret. His hair was disheveled, his pants stained, some from the bleach water, some from his own shame. He looked down at trembling hands and realized nothing about him resembled the man who had strutted into Harlem hours ago. He stood up unsteadily, legs wobbling under him. To his left, Park Avenue stretched like a red carpet into the safety of the Upper East Side. Clean sidewalks, tuxedo doormen, polished townhomes with gold plaques. Behind him, Harlem breathed in the silence, alive but no longer watching. Julian instinctively turned toward home, but stopped. Step by step he moved, leaning on a lamppost when his legs failed him. He didn't hail a cab, couldn't. Who would stop for a man that smelled like sewer water and fear? A cab did slow down for a moment, headlights casting yellow arcs across his face. The driver glanced at him, read the mess of desperation in half a second, and hit the gas. Too much trouble, not worth the meter. So Julian walked, block by block, 40 blocks, 40 blocks, past shadows and church stoops, past people he could no longer look in the eye. His shoes blistered his feet. Every step felt heavier. When he finally reached the marble lobby of the plaza, the chandelier lights felt garish. The concierge didn't even recognize him at first. He looked like a man returned from war or dragged through it. He didn't tell anyone, not his friends, not the dean at Yale, not even the therapist his mother recommended. Because how do you explain losing everything without ever stepping into bankruptcy court? He returned to school the next week, sat in the back of classrooms as professors traced chalk across blackboards. But all he heard was drip, drip, drip. A leaking pipe in a Harlem warehouse. When his classmates laughed loudly about their bar fights and late-night antics, Julian smiled like he was part of the chorus. But inside, he felt it again, the coarse rag in his hands, the bite of concrete on his knees, the void in his chest where his father used to live. Thanksgiving came. He went home, sat at the long mahogany dining table, silver that cost more than rent, crystal glasses reflecting candlelight, 12 feet of oak between him and his father. The man spoke, as he always did, about markets and mergers, vacation homes and hedge funds. He never once looked into Julian's eyes. And Julian didn't ask him why. They both knew, but neither would ever say the words. Back in Harlem, life moved with its rhythm. Autumn faded into winter. The first snowfall came early that year, sugar-coating the sidewalks in a silence that felt like forgiveness. In the brownstone on 128th Street, Mai sat by the fireplace, the soft crackle of flames soothing the evening stillness. She wasn't reading. She wasn't knitting. She was just watching, thinking. The front door creaked. Bumpy walked in from the cold, dusting snow from his boots. "You're late," she said gently. "Club business?" He nodded, setting his hat on the hook. "You know how it is." He walked over with a rectangular package tucked under his arm, wrapped in plain brown paper. "This showed up today," he said, handing it to her. No name, just said, for her. She raised an eyebrow, curious. Carefully, she unwrapped the paper. Inside was an elegant shoebox from Saks Fifth Avenue. She lifted the lid. Nestled inside, tucked in layers of tissue, sat a pair of pale blue silk heels, Italian crafted, breathtaking. There was no card, no signature, only a single slip of paper resting beneath the shoe. 3 words written in a hand so shaky it nearly scratched through the paper. I am sorry. My ran her fingers along the sill quietly, almost reverently. She looked at Bumpy. He sent them? Bumpy walked over to the window, looking out at the snowfall tumbling onto 125th Street. He poured himself a glass of whiskey before replying. He did. She stared at the heels. Beautiful but heavy somehow. Not a gift, not a prize. A surrender. Do you think he's okay? She asked. Bumpy took a sip of whiskey, slow, thoughtful. Alive? He said. Sure. He glanced back at her, his eyes darker now. But okay? He shook his head. No, Mai. He's not okay. Mai folded the tissue back over the shoes. She did not put them on, did not store them in the closet. Instead, she placed a shoebox gently on the mantel above the fireplace. A quiet crown atop her domain. Not a trophy of conquest, but a memento of something she didn't ask for and didn't enjoy, only endured. You're a hard man, Ellsworth, she finally said as the fire crackled beside them. He looked tired, but he also looked unchanged. That kind of strength was heavy to carry. I have to be, Bumpy said softly, his eyes tracing hers, so you can be soft. He leaned in, kissed her forehead, wrapped his arm around her waist. Come on, let's go get dinner. I know a little spot across town that makes the best peach cobbler you've tasted since Baton Rouge. She rose, took his arm, and together they stepped into the cold Harlem night. As they walked, the people parted like always. Men tipped their hats. Women smiled a little wider now. Respect flowed around them like a stream returning to its bed, and somewhere far away on the high floors of a glass tower overlooking Central Park, Julian Vanderhoven stared at his own reflection in the window. The skyline glittered behind him. His wine glass was untouched. He was safe. He was rich. And he was terrified. And so, the street outside Bumpy Johnson's brownstone settled into silence once again, where power had been tested, justice had been carved, not with bullets or fists, but with memory. Julian walked away, not with scars on his body, but with something worse, a burden on his soul. Because sometimes survival isn't mercy, it's the sentence. If this story struck a chord, then you're exactly the kind of listener we tell these for. Make sure you like the video so we know you want more stories like this. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, because trust me, more is coming. More stories, more legends, more choices that haunt long after the lights go out. Engaging, comment question, easy and emotional. If you were in Bumpy Johnson's shoes, would you have let Julian live? Or was mercy worse than death? Drop your answer in the comments. I'll be reading everyone. Let's talk.